Welcome back. In our previous lesson, we looked at some of the basics of an email and had ideas to keep your emails brief and clear. We also looked at some of the words we have to avoid. Now, let's turn to some of the more common punctuation and capitalization errors in English. So, punctuation is the little marks in written language, like a period or a comma. It's like road signs. If drivers ignore the road signs, then there would be worse traffic and many accidents. Just like road signs in any country, punctuation rules and symbols may be different, so it's important to understand the rules when you're writing in English. As for punctuation, I want to focus on 6 errors that are most common and easy to see quickly. These 6 are the apostrophe, the exclamation point, commas, the dreaded semicolon, quotation marks, and finally emoticons or text symbols. Before we go into the details of each of these, let's quickly test your knowledge. Good job! Now let's get into the details of punctuation. First, the apostrophe. It is used for possession, like Susie's laptop or Jerry's address. If you use it in a contraction like can't or wouldn't, you should not put it in an email. Second, the exclamation point is one of the most overused symbols in punctuation. Frankly, it should almost never be used in professional emails. It should never be used more than once. My nephews use these in messages on Facebook, but I almost never use them at work. Third, commas. The best rule for these is to read your email aloud. For example, "Hey Susie, for our meeting later today, I will bring all of the supplies. If you have time, could you pick up the coffee and snacks on your way? Thanks, Jerry." If you pause, that is where commas should go. Also, use commas with fanboys: for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so, when you use these words to connect 2 sentences. Next, a list is where you would need commas. Look at how I wrote all of the fanboys. I had to put a comma in between all of them because they are a series or a list of things. You also use commas to set off all geographical names like Moscow, Russia, or Paris, France, or for items in dates except the month and day, like October 10th, 2011, and for titles in names such as Philip Hollingsworth, MD. This is just basic information about commas, but you can find more information all over the internet on this topic. One of my favorite sites is The Owl at Purdue, where you can find information on pretty much anything related to grammar, and the information is geared towards an ESL audience. Fourth, this is another thing I tell my students all the time. The semicolon is used wrong more than it's used correctly. I avoid it. Seriously, even if I'm slightly unsure, I find a different way to write my thought. But if you must use one, this is one of the main rules from the OWL website. Use a semicolon to join parts of a series when some items of the series already include commas. Fifth, quotation marks. These are not to be used for emphasis, like in this example. I would really like to meet you. They're only supposed to be used when you're telling your reader exactly what someone said. Take a look at this example. He said, "I would really like to meet you." The punctuation for using them is really tricky. It should be a very rare instance when you should use these as well. Again, if you absolutely must use them, you should consult the online writing lab at Purdue. Finally, do not use emoticons like you do in a text message. If you knew your reader well enough to send a text, you would not be sending an email. Do not mix up the writing styles. Here's another example of how not to use the semicolon in an email. There's one punctuation item I didn't mention because I thought it might be too easy for you. It's the period. Don't forget to add it at the end of every sentence unless it's a question. So, we've now looked at how and when to use the apostrophe, not overusing the exclamation point, and where to place commas. We've also learned about the semicolon, how to use quotation marks properly, and finally, not using emoticons and text message type stuff in our emails. You should now be more comfortable with your punctuation.